Congratulations, you guys. That was really thoughtful work. I think a lot of us could relate to the why of your research. We've all been at that awkward dinner party or have had instances where the distraction of our phone has led to bad results, right? So I'm curious, how did you go about choosing the form of your behavior disruption?
Should I start? So the form of mine was a wooden box, and there were a few reasons to this. First of all, there was the symbolic meaning of us deliberately putting our smartphones into a wooden box. This showed the dedication of us actually trying to stay away from the phone, and it reminded us of it again. And there was also the physical presence, where this is something that stays in your house and you encounter it every day. So that would also remind us and encourage us to take a break. And I think the third would be the simple interaction. Mm-hmm. Instead of waiting for your phone to turn on and off, you can just put it in and that's it.
So I guess I had gone through a number of different prototypes from the fall to now. And when I originally was thinking about that checking habit, constantly picking up your phone, I had thought that the way to approach that was to keep people off of their phones by not allowing them to go on it at all. So I had an addition to a phone case that offered prompts or cards for situations. And through user testing throughout the course of the year, it was made apparent that I needed to work with people and their use of the phone rather than trying to keep them separate from it because it's just too integral to our day-to-day.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think one of the biggest problems with digital stress, as I'm talking about it at least, is the sort of unpredictable and variable nature of it. When you get one of those red notification dots, they all look the same. It could be important, it could be completely meaningless. So something I wanted to do was take that sort of variable, unpredictable type of interaction and make it something that was predictable. So I chose email. While that might be seen as a source of a lot of stress, these emails are sent at the same time, either every day or every week. So I'm hoping that the way users interact with it is more, the predictability makes it less stressful.
Yeah, I started out looking a lot at ceremony and ritual, and thought it was really fascinating that people create meaning through repeating actions over and over again, and that it happens to be we're all gathering around something and making it meaningful. I have this really incredible group of friends out of Santa Fe, New Mexico, that ceremony and ritual is a large part of their gatherings, and food happens to always be there. And so when I was thinking about how to deconstruct something like that and actually build it from a design perspective, food and dining seemed like the obvious choice to pursue it.
I think what's interesting is that as designers, we often don't know what the unintended consequences that we bring about, right? Facebook might not have known that this would become a source of couple fights, right? So what have you guys learned as designers for designing for behavior change?
Well, I think one thing was, I think all of us were trying to create a behavior change that we're very used to already. Mm-hmm. So for example, like smartphones, we're already used to taking them all everywhere we go. And the most important thing I learned was that it has to be, we have to take really baby steps at it. Like we have to go step by step, little by little. If we try to change too much at once, it just doesn't work. Yeah. For example, I first had a prototype where it was actually suggesting activities for you to do instead of using your smartphones. And this turned out that like people already had things in mind what they wanted to do. They wouldn't follow a suggestion from myself, so they would
never do what you want them to
do. they do what they want to do.
Yeah.
So it was just simply taking the phone out of their hands, and that was enough to actually give them a break.
Yeah, I'd echo what John said, and I think just kind of reframe it to say that having people use what you've built offers you a lot of insight into where you maybe thought it would go and where it ends up actually going.
Yeah, I kind of, I feel like so much of the discourse, at least in the media these days, is very strictly anti-technology, or it's either strictly pro or strictly anti, and I kind of wanted to work in a space that was somewhere in the middle and express that to my users and hope that they kind of got that from the product itself. I feel like there is this fire hose of information, and that's kind of here to stay, but that doesn't mean we can't change how we position ourselves to it and how we interact with it.
Yeah, I would say designing for behavior change can quickly become really contrived. And I think designers often have this empirical sense of what's right and what's wrong and saying, okay, we're all going in this direction, which is wrong because it's so saturated. So now we need to go in the polar opposite and change it. I think we have to be really careful of assigning that value and telling people what to do, because people will revolt, they will rebel and just say like, exactly like, who are you to tell me what to do? I think one of the biggest things that I learned was sort of this idea of this emergent environment, or sort of giving choice to the individual, of saying like, I will present you with something, I will show you objectively what you are doing, but I think it's so important to really understand that like these are people who have like their own experiences and values, and just show them what they're doing and let them decide if that's, I think that's what's brilliant about Willa's work. It's just sort of saying, I'm showing you and you can make an assessment of this, and I'm not telling you whether it's right or wrong. So.
Yeah. I think learning as designers to cede control is an important insight. So, last question. What do you imagine will be the major takeaways from this thesis experience as you set out in your professional experiences?
I'll take it away. I did never in a million years that I think my thesis would be about dining. And it's been fascinating. And it's sort of like I've been through the gauntlet of being like, is this about food? Is this about this? And like getting really meta. And there's been so many things, but I've learned so much about a personal process, and I think really just trusting an intuition about something. And I think as designers, we're really trained to be unique observers of what's happening in the world, and framing the proper perspective around that to make it relevant and to make it really interesting. And so just going through this process, really learning that about myself, and just saying like, get into the work, build it, put it out in front of people, let them break it, let them explore it and do things with it that you never would have imagined. It's really powerful.
Yeah, I think less than 2 months even now ago from here, I kind of came to the realization that I really wanted to make something that was fully functional, that people could sign up for and use. And so I guess I learned two things: that it's possible to get a lot done in 2 months, and but also that we have the tools, and that those tools are so powerful now, especially even compared to 5 years ago. Even as designers, I have a bit of an engineering background, but I wouldn't consider myself an engineer, and I think that's really empowering, that all of us have the power to make things that people can use, tomorrow.
I think as interaction designers that we have a bit of responsibility to design interactions that are good or can benefit the user. And so through some of the research that I'd done, just looking at how many different habit loops are designed into our interactions on technology, I think it's something to keep in mind with what we design in the future, how we approach our projects. And like Alex said, you can't control, or you don't want to make contrived experiences, but it's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, similar to these opinions, I realized that there needs to be a good balance between the actual making and building and then the storytelling. Because I felt like technology, it's nothing unless it actually communicates to the users, and we have to let them know what we really mean by building these prototypes or products. I think that was a great lesson I learned.
Great. Thank you. I think now it's time for a break. Yep. Great.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.